If you were to plan a typical US family vacation, it'd likely include 2 adults, 1.3 children, and unless you're already living in Hawaii or California, you'd be loading the family into a 12.5-year-old SUV for a 6-day, 5-night trip to one of Florida, New York, California, or Texas. Which makes sense as American workers get an average of just 11 vacation days each year. Balancing honey-do lists with quality family time and a few days at the beach or a few nights in the hustle and bustle of one of America's biggest cities. That's why Florida, New York, California, alongside Texas, are America's most visited states, thanks in large part to each of those states having beautiful beaches or significant urban cores, or both. Obviously, geography and demographics play a role as well, with Florida being the biggest and most built-up beach state on the entire East Coast and being home to Disney, Miami, and insert spring break city here. Texas is massive and home to the nation's 4th, 7th, 11th, 12th, and 23rd biggest cities, and California has LA, San Diego, and San Francisco, along with a whole 10th of the US population, Disneyland, and nearly 15% of the US economy. But you know what South Dakota has? Literally none of that stuff. So then you may be asking yourself, why South Dakota, located at the geographic center of the United States with a total population of less than 1 million residents and just a single city with more than 80,000 residents, only 2 cities with at least 30,000 residents, how it has a major tourism problem when South Dakota lacks almost everything associated with being a tourism draw. Because while metropolitan Sioux Falls may have a population of nearly 290,000, Sioux Falls is about as suburban as a city of its size can be. Meaning that at first glance, the only tourism problem South Dakota should have is its wholesale lack of tourism-based features. But that isn't the case. Tourism is big in South Dakota, and South Dakota has a big tourism problem. Let me explain. South Dakota is actually a really popular destination, with 14.7 million annual visitors looking to enjoy its natural attractions, historic significance, and bountiful outdoor recreation. In fact, South Dakota's tourism industry did almost $5 billion in revenue last year, about 5% more than the previous year, and a record high for the state. South Dakota has no shortage of unique landmarks. All 8 of its, as they call it, Great 8 natural attractions are truly fascinating. Obviously, Mount Rushmore, the actual mountain with 4 of America's most popular presidential faces carved into it, is the most popular state attraction, with 2.4 million people coming to see those 60-foot-tall faces every year. The Badlands, one of the state's 2 national parks, gets about half that many visitors. Jewel Cave, like Mount Rushmore, is considered a national monument, not park, with more than 220,000 miles of mapped-out passages, while 1.8 million people visit the incredible rock formations of Custer State Park every year, and the historic Deadwood town would have you feeling like it's still the Wild West times of 1876. Crazy Horse, located in the Black Hills, is an homage to South Dakota's deep native roots, and it is the world's largest mountain carving, while the state offers perhaps the nation's most pristine views of the Missouri River, and Wind Cave was the first cave to ever be named a national park. Then there's the famous Sturgis motorcycle rally that happens there every year, with more than 500,000 people overflowing this otherwise quaint little town in western South Dakota, transforming it into a buzzing party town for 10 days every August, while generating nearly $1 billion in regional revenue. And that's probably a good place to shift this conversation from why South Dakota is serious about tourism to how tourism has become a serious problem for America's 5th least populated state. Because while the direct and indirect effects of tourism economics can be complicated, as there are real benefits too, from the recreational value of South Dakota's parks to the state's $384 million in annual tourism earnings, but as we'll discuss here shortly, systemic tourism problems in South Dakota are, in fact, significant and widespread nonetheless. Just imagine the major turmoil of dropping 500,000 vacationers into a traditionally small town like Sturgis, where the normal population is well under 10,000. It transforms Sturgis into one of South Dakota's biggest cities overnight, only without all the stuff a city of that size needs to properly function. And it isn't just the instant chaos of impossible logistics either, as even decades of preparation does little to slow down the level of overcrowding, congestion, litter, and vital resources strain that comes from an event of this magnitude. A wild party that deeply obstructs the daily lives of thousands of local residents, and sure, some of them benefit heavily. But the costs of having a Sturgis are so substantial that calling it a feature for the people that call Sturgis home seems heavy-handed. But many of the issues that come along with Sturgis can be seen throughout South Dakota's tourism industry, as the state's emphasis on earning those tourism dollars has created an environment where litter, pollution, resource and infrastructure strain, and general congestion and obstruction are increasingly commonplace. As tourism dollars have taken hold of South Dakota's economy, with tourism directly accounting for 16% of its sales tax and 5% of statewide GDP. As the more dependent a state gets on tourism, the more significantly it's impacted by the peaks and troughs of an industry that has plenty of both. Perhaps more concerning, though, is the 60,000 tourism jobs that make up 12% of South Dakota's workforce, many of which are part-time or seasonal, as the tourism industry is notorious for low pay and limited benefits. Something made even worse when you consider that the benefits of tourism typically sit in small pockets, doing little for the areas outside the state's most notable attractions, leaving small communities almost completely dependent on visitor dollars, while much of the state sees little to nothing from it.